If you listen to music online, I'm sure you have the same issue most of us face. The online music services have gotten out of control. They're overstuffed, a bit convoluted, and it's often hard to find what you really want. But there's a solution, accuradio.com. It's a really unique brand of online radio that I know you're going to love. Not only is the website easy to use to discover new content, but in addition to the standard music you'd expect to find, they also have an amazing collection of Broadway and theater-adjacent music. From cast albums to collections grouped by decade or even Broadway-related artists, all their channels are curated by a real person, so you know they're going to be good. The best part of it all? It's 100% free. So if you're looking for better music for your workday, give AccuRadio a try. That's ACCUradio.com. AccuRadio.
Over 25 years ago, on September 29th, 1998, we watched a brainy girl with curly hair drop everything to follow a guy she only kind of knew all the way to college. And so began Felicity. My name is Juliette Littman, and I'm a Felicity superfan. Join me, Amanda Foreman, who you may know better as Megan, the roommate, and Greg Grunberg, who you may also know as Sean Blunberg, as the three of us revisit our favorite moments from the show and talk to the people who helped shape it. Listen to Dear Felicity on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
In the spirit of reconciliation, the Theatre Thoughts podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all traditional custodians of the land on which our episodes are recorded.
We're fresh in the industry and there was nothing for us, and so that's why I decided to put on Much Ado About Nothing back in 2022, and from there I realized that sustainable theatre is something that we absolutely need to be doing. So alongside acting and my career as an actor, I started my company Blinking Light because I just really want to help push this movement. It's so important to future-proof the arts in Australia, and also just it opens up a world of creative opportunities thinking about sustainability.
You're listening to the Theatre Thoughts podcast, where we dive deep into the world of theatre and celebrate the magic of the stage. I'm your host, Justin Clarke, and I'm here to guide you through insightful conversations, behind-the-scenes stories, and thought-provoking discussions about everything theatre-related. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to remind you to connect with us on social media. You can follow us on Instagram at TheatreThoughtsAUS and TTPod_official for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and exclusive interviews. You can also find us on TikTok at Theatre Thoughts Australia for even more theatre goodness. And if you'd like to support the podcast and gain access to exclusive content, consider subscribing to our Patreon. So whether you're a seasoned theatregoer or just starting your journey, please sit back, relax, and enjoy this brand new episode of the Theatre Thoughts podcast. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Theatre Thoughts podcast. I have with me a guest I've been wanting to talk to for a while. They have studied theatre and Mandarin at the Drew University, and upon graduation was awarded the Thomas H. Keane President's Award for Excellence in Theatre, which sounds very illustrious. While in the US, they performed off-Broadway and studied devising with Tectonic Theatre Project. When returning to Australia, they conceptualised and produced the sold-out immersive production of Much Ado About Nothing and was selected for ATYP's 2021 National Studio. She's the founder of Blinking Light Theatre, which seeks to further the fight against climate change within a theatrical space. It's Izabella Louk. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so keen to talk to you. I saw 39 Steps not long ago after you guys did it in Sydney, and I was really interested because the way you run Blinking Light Theatre is obviously focusing on battling climate change through creating a sustainable and ethically sustainable theatre space. And I was like, how does that actually work? So I was very interested to talk to you, and I'm very keen to get all your thoughts on that today.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited to chat.
But the first thing we'll do is we'll learn about you first, for those who don't know. I know I just did a little bio, but there was a lot I left out of that just for my own wrapping around my mouth. But yeah, if you could talk about yourself for a sec and give us a bit of an insight into your career in theatre.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, I studied at Drew, which is in New Jersey in the US. And I lived over there for 4 years. I had the most amazing experience. And actually, as part of my theater degree, we had to take general education classes. So, like a math class and a science, one row environmental science class, which sort of opened my eyes to, obviously, we all know climate change is happening, but that is what opened my eyes to climate change. And while I was over there, I also trained with the Shakespeare Theatre of New Jersey and, like you said, Tectonic, who are just an insane company and they're doing such cool stuff. And I came back because of COVID, as I think a lot of Australians did. Had no idea what I was doing with myself. And then sort of realized that there were a lot of us in the same boat and that there were so many people who were robbed of their showcase or their last sort of year of drama school or just were fresh in the industry and there was nothing for us. And so that's why I decided to put on Much Ado About Nothing back in 2022. And from there, yeah, I realized that sustainable theatre is something that we absolutely need to be doing. So alongside acting and my career as an actor, started my company Blinking Light because I just really want to help push this movement. It's so important to future-proof the arts in Australia, and also just it opens up a world of creative opportunities thinking about sustainability. And as an actor, I've toured with a lot of children's theatre. I performed with the Australian Ballet last year, which was so cool being on the Opera House stage.
Oh, cool.
I did The Wolves, an absolute blast with that. Yeah. And I'm just finished up 39 Steps.
That's so cool. So you're like me, you got a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, which is really cool.
Yeah, acting, writing, producing, I love it all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think what I liked about Blinking Lights' idea about sustainable theatre is you don't think about it when you're watching it. And then afterwards, I saw you do a post about where all the stuff came from and where it went. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's where it all ties in. But we'll get to that. I'll put a pin in that. We'll get to that in a bit because that's kind of like the main thing I want to talk about. But I'd love to ask you our 1 minute theatre thoughts questions first and kind of pick your brain on theatre before we dive into all the nitty gritty stuff.
Of course.
Hey, well, the first question I'd love to know is what has been your favourite production you've seen recently?
I went to the movie last week and watched the NT live production of Vanya with Andrew Scott.
Yes.
Amazing, mind-blowing. I sat in the theatre or the cinema afterwards, just sort of in my seat until they asked us to leave. Because it was just, he did an amazing job.
I got a screener link because I had a Q&A with the director of it. And when I watched it, I was just like I knew Andrew Scott was a good actor. Like I'd seen him do a Hamlet and I was like, it's the best Hamlet I've ever seen. I've seen him in Fleabag and you know he's a good actor. And then I saw that and I went, oh no, he's a very good actor. Like he's
incredible.
Insane. Like
I love Uncle Vanya just as a play, but I didn't realize that he played all the characters because my friend just said, you want to come see this? And I'd heard it was good, so I went along. But he plays all of them, and I had no idea going in, but it was so clear and crisp, and each character had so much depth, and it was amazing to watch.
Yeah, I don't know how he gave each character so much depth, but also you knew exactly who each character was, and it wasn't like one of those big shifts like I guess like you get with I don't know if you ever saw the picture of Dorian Gray. Like they were kind of like big shifts of character, but his were just so subtle and just like picking up a ball, lighting a cigarette, putting a cloth over his shoulder. It was just like those are the characters, and I was like, this is acting, you know.
And none of it was a stereotype or a trope. Like he just filled the world for each character so beautifully and nuanced.
Nuanced. Nuanced. Yeah, that's what.
That's a word now.
Well, okay. I'd love to know then, as an actor, what's a dream role you'd love to tackle?
I have two. One of them, I would love to play Rosencrantz or Guildenstern in Hamlet. I think they're just such fun, silly roles. And obviously the play isn't particularly silly. But I think them in just the function they serve in the script is just quite silly. And their pretensions are just quite And I think there's so much to dig into with them not being traditionally like the comic or clown roles, but them in that play. I think there's so much there. I would just love to do that someday. And the other one I would love to do is Julie in Julie by Polly Stenham, which is an adaptation of the original Miss Julie.
Oh, interesting. Those are two great answers. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say Rosencrantz Guildenstern before. They usually go like Lady Macbeth or something like big. Yeah. But I love that you've gone for them. That is such a good answer.
I think they're so funny. And every time I see Hamlet or read it, it just reinforces that for myself. I'll have to produce it someday.
Yeah, give it a go. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to know then, what is your all-time, or do you have a all-time favorite production?
Yes. I saw We're Gonna Die, which is such a depressing show name, at stage in New York, like 2 weeks before we all shut down in 2020. And it's not really a musical, it's a song cycle where there's one woman and she's just monologuing about this tragedy in her life and her friends' lives and everything that's going on. And she intersperses it with songs. And it's really quite depressing. But then at the end of the show, it sort of builds into this fabulous call and response between the audience and the people on stage, and everyone's singing We're Gonna Die, and there's beach balls being thrown around the auditorium like it's a concert. And it was fantastic. And I think seeing it right before lockdown probably influenced my interpretation of it, but it was amazing. And it left me feeling quite empowered, because I think there's something quite radical in accepting, yeah, we're sort of at the hands of fate in the end, but we can have a great time on the way there.
That sounds absolutely insane. What an insane show. How crazy.
It's amazing. Even reading the script, it's one of those scripts that you can get just as much from reading as you can from seeing it on stage. Yeah,
right. Gotcha. Well, then I don't know if this is going to be the same answer or not, but which production would you most want to see come to Australia?
Either We're Gonna Die or Finding Neverland the musical. It's beautiful and it's playful and imaginative. And I think there's something so lovely in just, I mean, as theatre people, that's all we really do, right? Play, pretend, and play all day. So I think there's something beautiful that musical has to say about play as an adult, which I think is nice.
Yeah, I think that would play pretty well here. I could see that coming here, because who was in that? Jeremy Jordan, I think, was in it.
Kelly and the guy who played Mr. Schuster.
Oh, yeah. He was in the original, wasn't he? Yeah, that's right. And then Frasier was Captain Hook, I think.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, how good. Well, great. Excellent. Thank you so much for giving me your thoughts on those questions. I love delving in and talking a bit of theatre before getting into the good stuff.
Of course.
If you listen to music online, I'm sure you have the same issue most of us face. The online music services have gotten out of control. They're overstuffed, a bit convoluted, and it's often hard to find what you really want. But there's a solution, AccuRadio.com. It's a really unique brand of online radio that I know you're going to love. Not only is the website easy to use to discover new content, but in addition to the standard music you'd expect to find, they also have an amazing collection of Broadway and theater-adjacent music. From cast albums to collections grouped by decade or even Broadway-related artists, all their channels are curated by a real person, so you know they're going to be good. The best part of it all? It's 100% free. So if you're looking for better music for your workday, give AccuRadio a try. That's ACCURadio.com. AccuRadio.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Okay, well, let's turn our attention then to Blinking Light Theatre. So, I'll give a little description, but I'd love for you, obviously, to fill in the gaps. So, Blinking Light Theatre is dedicated to creating bold works of theatre that build community, spread joy, and further the fight against climate change. Now, I got this off your website, so this is like straight off it. But you aim to make sure that 90% of materials used in the productions have had previous lives somewhere. All the other materials are sourced sustainably. The damaging or toxic materials are avoided. mileage associated with production is consciously reduced, and 90% of materials are reused or recycled post-show. So that is like really detailed and really, really specific. So I guess the question I want to ask is, how did you come to those decisions?
So there's not a lot of guidelines around sustainable theatre creation, but there's this fantastic organization called the Theatre Green Book, and I think it's based in the UK, and they've got these 60-page handbooks for how to design sustainably, how to run a front of house sustainably, how to run tech sustainably, and they've got guidelines whether you're a small theatre, a mid theatre, or sort of a big Broadway production. And those guidelines, some of them worked within sort of the scope of a Sydney indie theatre scene, and some of them didn't. And then there was things that I thought, we followed these guidelines for Much Ado About Nothing back in 2022. And having done that, I thought, there's things that we can probably build on and like push ourselves further on. And there's things that just are really tricky for us. I mean, Sydney's such a sprawling city that it is really hard to get to some places without a car. So the mileage thing is trickier than it might be in a city like New York, where you can just get the subway everywhere. So I sort of adapted those guidelines for use in our show, added some, and then also as we've been going along, I've been able to see, well, we're meeting that. We're far excelling beyond that. And I can just push us and see where we land. Or what if I combine that guideline and that guideline? What happens then? And I think I've been so lucky in that I've worked with teams that are really, really receptive to that. And so a big part of my process as a producer is starting any production process with sustainability training, because it's all good and well to say, let's be sustainable, but we're also all at different places on our climate journey. So starting with the training to make sure we're all on the same page, and it's less training and more an open forum as well. And that's been really great in that designers have said, well, I could do this and we haven't even thought about this, and we can reduce our electricity consumption by programming in different types of lights and having lights that do more rather than more lights, or just working with front of houses and them saying, well, I actually don't need a printed list of tickets. So there's a lot of feedback involved in developing those guidelines.
Yeah, and I don't think, this is where I feel like some people would look when you say you're doing like sustainable theatre, and some people would go, oh, well, it must be like shabby or like cheap or something like that. But seeing 39 Steps, it wasn't in any way, shape or form. You know, it was a proper production. So that's why I sat there and I went, where's the sustainability impact come through? And then when I saw your post-show like rundown, and you were like, oh, we got this from here, we got this from here, we recycled this was borrowed, so we turned it back. Like, I was just like, oh, okay, so they've built it around and found ways to make it sustainable, but it still is a professionally run production.
There's absolutely this sort of idea that I think is going around that sustainability does mean compromising on sort of aesthetics or artistic integrity. And it really doesn't have to be like that. I think if you come in with sustainability and just a sustainable mindset from the get-go, you're designing with it in mind. So rather than thinking, oh, I need 25 styrofoam Christmas trees, you think, well, I can't do that and I'm being sustainable. So you just don't design it to begin with. Or if you don't schedule a rehearsal, if all your actors live in Glebe, say, you don't schedule a rehearsal in the back of Burke or something. So there's less of a compromise and more just, it has to be a thought process. And I think that is one hurdle to get over in that sustainability journey and that sustainability process, that it is a learning curve and it does take additional consideration, but you don't have to compromise.
Yeah, exactly. That's so great. And I feel like there's not a lot of companies who are doing that as well. So you're kind of, dare I say, leading the way in that in the Sydney theatre scene, which is props to you.
Thank you. It's been really exciting because even just chatting to people after the show, they've said, oh, I can do that for my next show. I'm going to try that out. And it's baby steps, because the more we all do it, we don't have to be perfect. We just all have to try. Yeah.
And that's it. And you've got another show coming up. You told us before we started you've got a new show coming up. So let's chat about that. You said it was a new work by David Halgren, who was in the 39 Steps.
Yes. Yeah, it's a new work. It's sort of based around the idea that we really are losing a lot of theatre and a lot of art spaces. So in the world of the play, the government has outlawed theatre, and it's a race against time and a race against the clock and a race against attitudes around theatre and around art to get a show on stage. The show within a show being an adaptation of Hamlet, actually. Speak of the devil. So it's, I think, quite an insightful reflection on what I think we're going through in Sydney right now. We're really losing so many beautiful spaces for expression and for arts that we are turning to sort of other spaces and found spaces. So I think that's quite relevant. And again, it'll be a sustainable production. And yeah, I'm really excited. It'll be on in October.
Very good. Very exciting. I love, obviously, new pieces of work as well. Always a good thing in Sydney. I feel like we do that very well in Sydney. We obviously have heaps of new work that comes through. And then mixing it with all these sustainable impacts is, all the sustainable design is a great way to do it. So well done. I'd love to ask you a question that I ask everyone who comes on to the podcast. I'd love to know how you think, and this kind of leads into what we're talking about as well, how you think the theatre industry's changed over the years and how those changes have impacted the work that you do.
I think it's changed, I mean, from the sustainability point of view, it's changed in that we're thinking about it at all. And there's so many great organizations popping up, like Sustainable Theatres Australia is one that's Sydney and Melbourne based. There's Julie's Bicycle in the UK, who've been around forever. And there's sustainable festivals popping up. So I think we're seeing an eye towards that, which is so exciting. And not just pieces about climate change, which are obviously so important in the conversation, and storytelling is obviously at the heart of theatre, but we're seeing people just be conscious of how they're making things, which is huge and so exciting. But I think we're also seeing the industry like demystified, for want of a better word. I think it's slowly opening, and very slowly, obviously, but opening up, and people are willing to share a little bit more, and there's less gatekeeping for new artists, or, you know, artists who traditionally have less access to this industry because it has been gatekept from them. So I think we're seeing it become demystified, and people, or maybe from the top down, people are actively making the effort to just explain how it all works, which is just really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. What a great answer. I think no one's, you're offering a new perspective, and not a lot of my guests have said, which is great. Gatekeeping, no one's talked about that so far with any of my guests. So I'd love to just build on that for a second. Why do you think that's an important thing to avoid?
Well, I mean, theatre is about community. I mean, all art is about community, but specifically here, theatre is about community. And I think it should always be for the community. And you also can't do it without a community. You can't do theatre unless you've got an audience sitting out there ready to support you. So I think if we're gatekeeping, it's not for the community, and we're not welcoming audiences in, we're not welcoming other artists in. So I think if we want theatre to be what it not traditionally should be, but at the end of the day, it's about stories, and it's about sharing a story with the person next to you and having that experience together. So if we're gatekeeping, we're not aiming towards that, and we're not striding towards that.
Excellent. Couldn't have said it better myself. Well done. So good. Well, Izabella, thank you so much for jumping on and having a chat about Blinking Lights and the productions coming up, which is super exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I'd love to know, though, for our audiences and our listeners, where can they learn more about you guys and about the work that you do?
We're on Instagram, blinkinglight.theatre, and we also have a very snazzy website, which is blinkinglighttheatre.com. And we've got all our shows, and we've also got information on, you know, creating sustainably. And later in the year, hopefully, we'll also have some sustainability workshops, which are for artists or just people who are interested in building on sustainability journey, jumping in with from the get-go.
Excellent. Love that. Well, please make sure you keep us up to date, and I'll shout out from the rooftops when that comes through. So thank you so much once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
A massive thank you to Izabella Louk for joining us as our special guest on this week's episode. For more information on Blinking Light Theatre and their upcoming productions, head to blinkinglighttheatre.com or follow the link in this episode's description. This episode was produced by Echidna Audio. Follow them on Instagram at Echidna Audio for all their audio services. Once again, if you enjoyed our podcast, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts and head to the link in this episode's description for our Instagram account, TikTok, YouTube, and Patreon. My name's Justin Clarke, and I'll see you next time here on the Theatre Thoughts Podcast.
Disney's Aladdin on Broadway is among the longest-running shows in Broadway history. But did you know that it almost never came to be?
We walked out of Seattle thinking, okay, we don't have it. We have a lot of work to do.
But against tremendous odds, in March of 2024, they celebrated 10 years on Broadway.
Disney did a great job because they really took the notes.
Go behind the magic and listen to this never-before-heard story, the magical making of Disney's Aladdin on Broadway. Available everywhere you can get your podcasts.
Can you identify an Elphaba just from her defying gravity war cry?
Can you name every actress in the Wicked to Waitress pipeline?
Or does the phrase witch switch mean anything to you?
Well then,
good news!
My name's Quincy.
And my name's Kevin.
And we're the hosts of Sentimental Men.
We're here to talk,
and maybe scream,
about our favorite women in musical theater, the witches of Wicked. So if spending a Friday night in a no-good deed rabbit hole on YouTube sounds like your idea of a good time, then Sentimental Men is the podcast for you.
And with guests like Jessica Vosk, Lucy Jones, and Stephanie J. Block, chances are we've already got an episode with your favorite Elphaba.
Or Glinda, like Laura Bell Bundy, Brittany Johnson, and Mackenzie Kurtz.
So pause your riff compilations, put down your copy of The Grimmery, and give Sentimental Men a listen.
You can find us on the Broadway Podcast Network or wherever you listen to podcasts.